Hello everyone, it's Easter Saturday and here I am socially isolating out at the orchard. I'm actually doing a bit of work on a vegetable garden today, but I thought I'd make a little video about our pears because the blossom is particularly spectacular today. We've been watching it build over the last 10 or 14 days. So I'm just going to walk around the pears really, and this is a row of espaliers that I've got looking particularly. This is winter Nellis. Right, these are our espaliers now. There's a bit of neglect here. The posts are, one or two of them have rotted. This one's sound. Some of the others are falling, so not to worry. These are not examples of perfect espaliers by any means, but they do for us, they do. This is Santa Claus, variety called Santa Claus. I think it's mainly called that because the leaves are very deep red. It's a winter pear. Here's some quite sparse blossom on this Josephine de Malines. Slightly thicker blossom on this fan-trained rather than espalier-trained Pear hardy, and almost no blossom at all on this example of Doyen du Comis. Just walking past the vegetable area towards the Pear orchard. That's a bird song, almost no wind. And here, right next to my cabin, is a lovely example of Blakeney red. Beautiful, symmetrical, clean blossom there catching the sun. It's about 8:30. Yeah, that's Blakeney red. It's a Perry pear. This is Louise Bon of Jersey, and hey, we've got little fruitlets. This is, I think, the first one to come into bloom. You see some little fruitlets there, little baby fruits. Wow. This one's nearly, well, the blossom's at absolute peak. See a little bit on the ground. There's a few of the other fine French pears. This is another Josephine de Malines, Louis Bon of Jersey, winter Nellis, and now the Perry orchard proper. Absolute massive blossom on that Helen's Early. My goodness, I don't think I've ever seen quite so much blossom. I first started thinking about Perry pears years ago when Julia's sister Kate and her family lived in Redditch, which is on the edge of the Perry pear country. We went for a long drive around the country, and every now and then what can only be described as a tower of blossom, a big mature tall Perry pear in full bloom. Anyway, this orchard is intended to be moving in that direction. These are all on large old-fashioned rootstocks. That is a variety called Winnell's Longdon. Over there is one called Butt, Hendry Huffcap. There's another very tall example of Blakeney red being the most widely grown pear variety. That one's called Gin. Perry is an interesting drink, much harder to find than cider. The term pear cider should not be used. There is no such thing as pear cider. Wine is made from grapes, cider is made from apples, and perry is made from pears. It used to be quite an important drink in England. It was a substitute for wine during some of our ancestors' many ruinous wars with France. You can see that a little bit better because it's in the shade. That's another one it's a variety called Butt. This is a newly planted tree, Moorcroft, no blossom yet. This is the oldest and tallest Perry pear we have. This is an example of Winnell's Longden. You can see that the fruiting, the flower is quite sparse on this one. It cropped heavily last year, so I'm actually very pleased to see it cropping at all this year. Winnell's Longden. Perry pears are, as a rule, they're small, they're hard, and they're bitter, and they're not at all nice to eat. Now you can make perry out of dessert pears like Burr Hardy and Conference. In fact, we have done. But you cannot eat perry pears. So with the perry that I've made so far, it's been a proportion of perry pears and ordinary pears. Now this is interesting. This is a sorry little specimen which only comes up to my tummy, just comes up to my chest. There's a tree here planted the same time as that Winnell's Longden there, which is standing about 16 feet tall, and we had a lot of fruit from it last year, a whole box of fruit, which significantly improved the quality of the perry. And that was planted at the same time as this. In a very, very wet year we had about 8-9 years ago, I put a tree guard around it, one of these corrugated plastic ones, and anyway it got rot, the whole length of it, the bark rotted and the whole thing died, so I had no choice but to cut it down, and some shoots came up from the base and I grafted onto one of the shoots. So you see that was grafted, that's a Blakeney Red. What I'll do this year is once the two are growing away, I'll select the better of the two and cut the other one clean out. But if it hadn't been for a little bit of inattention, I took the trouble to have, as you can see from these tracks, we do get animals coming in here to some extent. If I hadn't put that bark protector on that tree, probably it wouldn't have got bark rot and died, and it'd probably be as big as that one, which is a shame. This is a Blakeney Red being the most popular, widely grown, most reliable perry pear. This was grafted over onto a Burr Hardy on Quince A rootstock. You can see where it's being grafted. There's a graft there, it's growing away beautifully. So, but for the disaster we had with that little tree, that'd be bigger than this now, and this is big. Here's another little tree. This is Judge Amphlett. Perry pears mainly come from the Welsh borderlands, Hereford, Worcester, Shropshire, Gloucester, that sort of area. That's the place where perry growing really has been a big thing. And they have some funny names. This is a variety called Thorn, which doesn't get as big as some perry pears, but it crops quite early, which is of course an advantage. This is one called Cannock. That's to do with Cannock Chase. And this is a variety called Brandy. I've been this way before. Hendry Huffcap. There are several pears called Huffcap, Yellow Huffcap, etc. I must say the blossom looks absolutely perfect. I've never seen it looking quite so lovely. So, it's my perry pear orchard. The oldest tree there is about 9 years old. Most of them are 5 years old or thereabouts. And here's an open space in front of the cabin. When I'll really start using it is another story. If I'm out here working and I get an idea, a couple of lines of a poem or an idea for a song, I'll go ahead and write it down quickly, but I'm too busy with other things at the moment. So I'm recovering from some pretty bad stuff at the moment. If you're interested, check my diagnostic website. But yeah, I'm getting older, and I will retire from my daytime job eventually, and I'll finish the literary projects I've begun. There's a few more pears. We're planting pears here where the plums are dying back, I've mentioned before we have a major problem with our plums. I don't want to change tack right now, I'll talk about the plums later. Most of our plums have died out, and plums don't do well at all here. We're hoping to plant more pears, because pears do well. Perry pears don't require much looking after. They are very sturdy, they grow tall. We don't spray them. They seem to manage quite well without being sprayed. And Perry is a classy drink. It's classier than craft cider, and besides which, we're great for the beauty. This is another winter Nellis. I mentioned winter Nellis a few times in the past. It used to be grown quite widely in the days before we had refrigeration and mass transport and storage systems, because it naturally keeps quite a long time, and we've eaten these with pleasure from natural storage in February, which is a pretty long time for pears to keep. Yeah, originally we never thought about getting any pears because we thought, oh, they're too fiddly and they don't last very long in store and people might not buy them. But when I'm walking now, which is our main dessert pear section, we used to have Sunset and Bramley, and we discovered that we had more Bramley than we could sell, because everyone's got Bramley. If anyone's got an apple tree in their garden, it's probably a Bramley. These are some Conference. Not such a thick show of blossom, you'll notice. Not quite so beautiful. Oh, well, there's more than enough blossom on here. You know, if 1 in 10 of these blossoms sets of fruit, and it's early, the bees are working away. We do have a nest of wild bees, a box of wild bees here. We don't keep these ourselves because it's too much trouble. In the future, maybe we'll again, we used to. But yeah, plenty of pollination from wild bees. Those are Conference pears. If even 1 in 10 of those blossom sets of fruit, then that'll be the maximum crop that the tree can bear. If 1 in 2 of them sets fruit, it'll break every branch unless we thin aggressively. This is the pear I recommend. I have recommended most, and I will recommend it again. If you only have room for 1 pear in your garden, Concord. Concord is it came from a cross between Conference, which is an easy pear to grow, it's a heavy cropper, but it's not fantastic flavour. It's okay, but it's not fantastic flavour. And Doyenji Commies, which I've shown you earlier, has got by far the least blossom on it this year of any of my pears. Now, you can get a good crop from Doyenji Commies, but you won't get one every year. It's a difficult pear to grow. Oh, but the flavour is just absolutely exquisite. The flavour and the texture, truly delightful. So some Bright Spark crossed the 2 pears and got a best of both worlds pear, Concord. Concord, which is self-fertile. It's a very reliable cropper. It's often cropped when none of the other pears have done very well. Concord has done best, and the flavour is pretty good. I would say it's better than Conference, not as good as Commies, but then what is as good as Commies? If you've tasted really ripe Commies, ideally with some chilled Montbazillac from the Dordogne, then you'll know the worth. And there's a few other pears here. Some of these have been grafted over, some of these are Burhardy, and a few of these are Commies, not many, and there's a few unusual things here. This is a Conference that was grafted over to Seckel. Yeah, there's a single pair of Bartlett. Sorry, I said Bartlett. Williams, also known as Bartlett. When I was a kid, we used to have tinned Bartlett pears in syrup all the way from Australia. The economics of that seems to me very strange. I do remember them, very widely grown pear. Quite nice, doesn't keep very long. And finish up here. This is Seckel. This is a sorry little tree. I don't know why, but it just hasn't grown. I've had that happen occasionally. You get a tree from a reputable nursery, plant it, look after it, and it just will not grow. But I actually took some wood from this and grafted it onto an established other tree, this one, it's grown very well indeed. So what's wrong with that little one? I just don't know. Sometimes a tree gets stunted, maybe a solid ungrowable bark ring forms and chokes it like a straitjacket. I don't know. But every now and then this happens and you get a little tree, it just will not grow. Anyway, so there we are, there's the pear blossom. It's a very pretty sight, you'll probably be compelled to agree, and though it's still quite early, it's just starting to warm up now. The bees are working away. So back to where we started. I need to do some work on the poles that support these espaliers, but they're doing all right. The bees have buzzed off. Yeah, these are a couple of, here's a graft there, saddle graft. These are a few pears that I've grown, I've grafted here to move on later. Well, I'll just leave you with the bird song for another little while.